The Dew and the Quiet Ones, a Once Upon a Why story time. Misty tendrils of wafting fibers glittered in the early morning sun as they pulled back from the gently waking terraces, where the woolly worms slumbered in a rambling pile of multi-shaded hues of dark creams and lavender mochas, while the softest of breezes, more tasted than felt, took the wafting fibers to deposit onto the lines, waiting at the edges of the terraces to be collected by nimble fingers before the dew could collect on them. As everyone knew, dew was the drink of the quiet ones, and it imparted the wrong qualities onto the fiber. But that is not for today, because that low humming that ever so slowly approached the lowest garden terrace just around the side of the house, rising and falling in a lilting and calming rhythm, could only be but the best collector of dewless fiber. Where her humming preceded her arrival, and ever so gently the woolly worms stirred in their warm puddles of slumber. The older woolly worms, with their slightly coarser coats on the outside, shielding the inner circle where the two younger and less woolly worms still remained unmoving despite the slow increase in volume of the gentle humming that signaled it was time to be greeted and brushed by the gentlest of hands that would unfortunately stop to collect the fiber caught on the waiting lines instead of immediately brushing and scratching the hard-to-reach itches. But waiting was going to happen whether they liked it or not, as Tessa had not yet even made it up to the terrace gate, where she expected to see sprawled across the small stone threshold Old Sable in her usual spot, as close to the house as possible when the gate was closed, always preventing the gate from swinging open. Except this morning, Tessa benevolently ignored the fact that she was on the flat stone near the gate, and therefore not causing an even longer wait this morning for those cherished scratches, which had to wait anyways, as the precious fiber needed to be caught and wrangled from the lines before the dew could find it, as the mist finally drew back further up the hill, and the sun could gently warm up the stirring pile of warbling worms, where one of the youngest had somehow managed to slink away from the warm pile and appeared to be missing, causing Petal great consternation when she discovered this, making her grip onto the other young worm even more tightly, making Mosslet's antennae begin to jiggle in a high-pitched rumbling showing its displeasure, while simultaneously burrowing deeper into the coarse guard hairs of Petal to hide from the sun and the approaching shadow that inched along the ground as the humming grew in volume, only slightly louder than the whispering of the mist drawing back through the sighing grasses in the next terrace up, also filled with another still slumbering but larger group of woolly worms, where, frolicking in the still receding mist, could be seen the escaped Pipkin racing around with far too much energy and likely causing knots that would be painful to brush out later, but would have to happen because the shadow had finally reached the gate, and the humming rose up and down in a pleasing way, just as Old Sable's antennae rose up and down to the measured humming and the subtle encouragement to move out of the way of the gate, and while Old Sable rocked her weary body up onto her small calloused proto-legs, antennae continuing to bob merrily to the calm hum, as Tessa opened the gate, her basket slung over her arm, bare feet rooting into the soft, loamy ground in front of the gate, eyes glinting in the new morning light as the last of the mist receded up the rolling hills and over the near ridge of the valley, sun gently bathing the terrace in hugs and slow joy, while the dew began to sneak into the lower leaves of the herbs and flowers, and Mosslet snuggled under Petal's flowing woolly coat. Pipkin rumbled a high squeal, and Tessa meandered over to the tendrils of fiber caught in the lines around the terraces, slow, measured steps, timed to the sighing of the boughs and the dreams of the still slumbering birds, her circuit of the terrace bringing her to the next gate leading to the next terrace, collecting the loose fiber, all while her humming encouraged the wayward Pipkin to rejoin a worried Petal. Gentle, calloused hands delicately plucking and sorting the fiber off the lines and laying each clump in a special section of her basket, according to the solar whims, sighs of regrets, and her missing mug of tea she forgot somewhere, slowly steaming a dreamy fragrance of joys mixed with a tinge of regret. But the basket contained the few tools she needed, as she completed her measured circuit of her 4 terraces, each group of woolly worms rumbling along to the gentle humming as Tessa moved through the terrace, one hand collecting, the other gently running through the air, warding off the dew. Practiced movements timed to the hum and rumble, only disturbed by a mug of tea lost to the mint, and a happy rumble from Petal as she tended to her little adopted mosslet and returning Pipkin, gently pushing them towards the brushing stand, knowing they would be in need of a good brush. As another shadow slowly moved through the terrace, pulling out a bone comb from a basket and sitting at the side of the brushing stand, mind drifting over the valley, touching the small village below, joining the birds to see the river snake through the plains from the high northern mountains, flowing through a town and out into the southern wetlands, settling back into the firm little pulls of the comb through the soft, tangled woolly coat of Pipkin, thoroughly knotted from his morning dalliance with the fog and dew, while Tessa ambled back down from the upper terrace, a line of woolly worms undulating behind her for a turn at the brushing stand, knowing those hard-to-reach itchy spots would be scratched just the way they liked it, but only after a hummed question and a rumbled answer, with a little twitch of expressive antenna, and while the brushing took time, patient worms listened to the hum and joy as Tessa directs her fiber-collecting apprentice Marlene in the best places to comb and scratch for each woolly worm, making notes in a cloth-bound notebook, noting fiber collected, feels caught, and moods raised, all while wondering where her tea went as she hummed a quiet regret to the cooling mug, her apprentice handing her the wrong fibers, and old Maribel, disappointed by the bone comb tugging at her coarse guard hairs on the one side, while leaning into the fine antler comb on the other side that knew just where to comb and which spots to avoid. And Old Sable, having finished her turn, lumbered down the trail to find her special spot, and the line of worms made their way through the morning brushing stand, the elders of each group herding their young through and back up to their terraces to enjoy the laughing flowers and sighing grasses, all while the last of the steam sighed from a mug sitting on the table just outside the small house, where Old Sable finally found her spot on the front stoop, bathed in full sun, and quiet flowers just within reach for a mid-morning snack, as Tessa and Marlene gathered their fiber to sort the joys from the blues and the peas from the grapes, stepping over Old Sable to enter the house and finding the cold mug ready to please. This has been a Once Upon a Why story time.